Welcome to our channel. Today, we're diving into a story of passion, temptation, and the dangerous consequences of forbidden love. Follow Jack as he navigates the twists and turns of a complicated relationship. Filled with secrets, betrayal, and desire, this emotional rollercoaster will leave you questioning what happens when love and lust collide. Stick around as we unravel the dramatic journey that tests the boundaries of loyalty and self-control. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more captivating stories like this one. I was lost in this messy web of emotions, unable to break free. Maybe I was wrong from the very beginning when I was greedy and couldn't resist her alluring body. It was a shame that it was too late to turn back now. That day, as I came back from taking out the trash and was about to unlock my door, a soft hand brushed against me. I closed my eyes, savoring the sensation, completely forgetting how to open the lock. I just stood there, waiting for the next delightful move from that hand. It roamed all over me, teasingly exploring my most sensitive spots. A familiar scent, pleasant and comforting, wafted around me. "Why don't you come inside, honey?" "Hold on, Emily. I think I dropped the key." I bent down, picked up the key, and inserted it into the lock. As I opened the door and stepped inside, I couldn't help but think that at this very moment, even my own key envied the lock. But I had to wait, had to savor the anticipation that would make the moments to come even more exhilarating. "Jack, slow down, you're being too rough." "I can't help it, I'm too excited. Be gentle with me, please. What's gotten into you?" I didn't understand why I was being so forceful. My entire body felt like it was on fire, filled with an uncontrollable urge and excitement. I unbuttoned the last button on her blouse, and her figure slowly came into full view. It wasn't the first time we had done this, but it was the first time I had seen her take the initiative. Every time, I had to come up with new tricks to lure her to a motel, stomachaches, sunstrokes, all sorts of lame excuses. She was strange. Her words always contradicted her actions. She'd tell me to slow down, but her body would move passionately in sync with every breath I took. I felt like I didn't know the meaning of fatigue, tirelessly working my way through the afternoon until I drifted off to sleep without realizing it. It wasn't until I heard my mom calling, asking where I was, that I woke up with a start. Emily was gone, leaving me with only a text message. It said that she was sorry for keeping her scholarship a secret from me, that she was going to England in a month, and that she was sorry for drugging me to have one last passionate night together. She was breaking up with me because she didn't want to go the long distance and was afraid I would cheat on her. Ironically, she was the one betraying me to avoid being betrayed. Utterly devastated, I didn't even try to find her because I knew she would just avoid me. A thought crossed my mind. I wanted to get out of town, to escape from all the memories we had built over the past 6 years. I had already applied for a construction job in Los Angeles and had been accepted. According to the schedule, I was supposed to start in 5 days, but I wanted to go there a little earlier to settle in, find a place to live, and get everything sorted out. Today was the last day for preparation, and I had already packed everything. I spent the whole day visiting my grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins to say goodbye. That night, I barely had time to double-check my luggage to make sure I could leave early the next morning. Besides my clothes and personal belongings neatly packed in my suitcase, Mom had also stuffed a whole bag full of snacks, fruits, and candies. No matter how much I protested, she refused to take anything out. It was so heavy that I had to struggle to lift the strap onto my shoulder and carry it. Dad had asked my little brother to take a day off from his job as a bus driver and rent a 16-seater van to take the whole family to the airport to see me off. Being the only son, I was pampered relentlessly. My parents were constantly worried about everything, and sometimes, I felt suffocated by their concern. At the airport, I tried to look around to see if Emily had come to say goodbye. But it only made me feel worse. She was so cold-hearted. It only took a little over 2 hours for me to land at LAX. This place was truly foreign. The people, their way of life, their manner of speaking, the scenery, it all hit me at once, leaving me with a pang of loneliness. I pulled myself together and stepped outside to call David, my college buddy who was living here. He asked me to wait for him to pick me up, and I ended up waiting for what felt like an eternity. Finally, After almost an hour, he showed up and took me to the apartment complex. Rent here was significantly higher than back in the Midwest, but at least it was cleaner and nicer. The neighborhood was quite crowded, but I found the food and drinks to my liking, which helped ease my homesickness a bit. After putting away my belongings, I took a quick shower. We were planning to go all out for drinks that night with David and some of his friends from the same apartment complex. As I was busy unpacking and organizing my things, a whiff of perfume drifted in through the window. So sweet it was intoxicating. It smelled divine. I couldn't get enough of it. I kept sniffing the air, moving closer and closer to the door, until my face was almost buried in the chest of the landlady. "Geez, what are you doing?" I'm so sorry." My heart skipped a beat, not only because she appeared out of nowhere, but also because of her voluptuous figure, her milky white skin, and her beautiful face, all so alluring. "What are you doing staring at me like you want to eat me alive?" Since when did you move in here?" "Didn't David tell you? He arranged this room for his friend." Right. I'm David's friend. Just got here from the Midwest." "You're from the Midwest too?" The conversation between Marilyn and me went on, mostly about our shared Midwestern roots. Since we were both from the same region, we found it easy to connect. Marilyn was in her early 30s, with a friendly and approachable personality. "Make yourself at home, Jack," she said. "Don't worry about anything. This place is safe, but we do have some petty theft issues. So keep your valuables locked up." She then glanced suggestively at my crotch with a mischievous smile before turning away. Her hips swayed enticingly with each step she took, her round derriere bouncing alluringly. I couldn't tear my eyes away. She's hot. Damn it, I thought to myself. Around 7 p.m., our group of 6 headed out to a bar near our apartment complex. Just a short walk from a lake whose name escaped me. These guys were serious drinkers. I had to excuse myself several times to throw up, but they just kept going like it was nothing. "I can't take it anymore. I'm gonna head back." "You okay, Jack?" "Yeah, I'm fine. I can walk. You guys have fun." "Alright, suit yourself. More beer for us then," David said, settling back down on his plastic chair and rejoining the drinking spree. I dragged my drunk self back to the apartment complex, fumbling with my keys for what felt like an eternity before finally unlocking the door. I stumbled inside and immediately threw up violently in the bathroom. God, I haven't had a drinking session this intense in ages. While waiting for David to pick me up, I quickly called home to let my parents know I had landed safely. After texting them again, I decided to call it a night. Whenever I drink, my eyelids get heavy, and all I want to do is crawl into bed. As I reached my door, I smelled that intoxicating perfume again. I couldn't resist taking another whiff, trying to savor the aroma as much as possible. "Back from your drinking escapade, huh?" a voice asked. "Who is it? You seem pretty wasted." My vision was too blurry to make out who it was. I could barely see straight. I unlocked the door, fumbled for the light switch in the darkness, and ended up tripping and falling flat on my face. Marilyn's laughter filled the room. "You're hopeless," she said. "Can't hold your liquor, can you? Such a lightweight." She walked over, flipped the light switch, and helped me up. "Wow, you're strong," I mumbled. She helped me to my bed. That intoxicating perfume again, it was driving me crazy. It took all of Marilyn's strength to get me situated on the bed. As I lay there, surrounded by her captivating scent, our bodies brushed against each other, sending a surge of heat through me. Feeling bold, I wrapped my arms around her neck and stole a kiss. Startled, she pulled back and slapped me across the face. "What the hell are you doing? Get a grip," she hissed. That slap jolted me back to reality. I was instantly sober but too afraid to move, terrified she might slap me again. I pretended to be asleep as she continued to scold me. Maybe she thought I was truly drunk and didn't want to bother me anymore. When I heard her footsteps fade away, I slowly opened my eyes. She was gone. I stumbled out of bed, desperate for a glass of water. Alcohol always made me thirsty. I gulped down 2 glasses in a row before going to close the door. So, you're not actually drunk? Marilyn stood there, a smirk playing on her lips. What, Marilyn, I thought you left. Not yet. I had to keep up the act. You're so obvious, she said. You think you're slick, don't you? Trying to take advantage of me like that? No, Marilyn, I would never. It's just that. Just what? You're so beautiful, and the way you dress, and that perfume, it's too much for me to handle. I barely managed to restrain myself. Any other guy would have already jumped you. Oh yeah? Well, go ahead then, jump me, let's see what you got. With that, she pushed her breasts forward, resting her hands on her hips and giving me a seductive look. The sight of her was mesmerizing. She walked into the room, threw herself onto the bed, and looked at me defiantly. I was taken aback at first but quickly understood what she wanted. I was torn. Part of me wanted to devour her whole, but the other part was trying to stay calm, to suppress the desire that was consuming me. But the more I tried to fight it, the stronger it became. Finally, I stopped resisting. I didn't even bother closing the door as I walked slowly towards the alluring woman on the bed. It was only then that I noticed she was wearing a flimsy camisole that barely concealed anything. She had a robe on, but it might as well have been invisible. I guess that's how they dressed in Los Angeles. I found it strange, but I wasn't complaining. She had a way of revealing just enough to make my eyes stay glued to her. Her skin was incredibly pale, like porcelain, and her shoulders were delicate. Her collarbone exquisitely prominent. Her legs were long and toned, crossed casually like a carefree teenager. I forgot everything else at that moment. All I could see was her breathtaking beauty. I couldn't control myself any longer. You want to challenge me? I said, my voice husky with desire. I never back down from a challenge. Oh yeah? Prove it. She purred. Show me what you got. Her voice was getting softer, her words barely audible above the frantic beating of my heart. My hands roamed freely over her body, reveling in the smoothness of her skin. The intoxicating scent of her perfume filled the small room, fueling my excitement. Emily who? I hadn't been with a woman since she left. But now, I had a chance to devour my prey. I was emboldened, ready for the battle ahead. As I leaned in closer, her beauty struck me like a physical force. I couldn't believe how captivating she was. I wasn't new to this. I'd had my fair share of relationships and had slept with most of my girlfriends. But none of them could compare to the woman lying in front of me. Jack. Before I could react, David barged in, his eyes half closed, his face flushed. Dude, you're not asleep yet? What are you doing? When did you get back? Marilyn and I froze, quickly pulling the blanket over ourselves. It seemed my friend was too drunk to even notice what was going on. You're not asleep yet? He repeated, his words slurring. Yeah, hey, can I use your bathroom for a sec? My roommate turned it into a war zone or something. Oh, yeah, sure, go ahead, just try not to fall over. He was in no condition to be walking around. I got up and guided him toward the bathroom, afraid he might hit his head on something. God, he drank too much. I closed the door behind him and heard him retching violently. I sat on the edge of the bed, wincing at the sounds coming from the bathroom. My hand was still tangled in the blanket, gently stroking Marilyn's hair. Slowly, it moved down to her cheek, her chin, her neck, her delicate collarbone. Marilyn responded by bringing my hand to her mouth, kissing it softly. It felt like a jolt of electricity was running through me, and I surrendered to the unfamiliar sensation. A few minutes later, David emerged from the bathroom, leaving behind an unbearable stench. I jumped up and turned on the fan, throwing the windows open to air out the room. Once I was sure he was safely back in his own apartment, I locked the door, turned off the lights, and slipped back into bed. My motion sensor night light flicked on, casting a soft glow over the room. I put on some quiet music, knowing I might get complaints from the neighbors, but it was better than them hearing the sounds that were about to fill the room. Under the dim glow of the nightlight, Marilyn moved, throwing off the blanket and pouncing on me. Her lips crashed onto mine. And I responded with equal fervor. We were lost in the darkness. Our bodies moving together as one. I was consumed by her. And she, by the pleasure I gave her. I covered her mouth with my hand to stifle her moans. But the rhythmic squeaking of the metal bed frame, swaying precariously under our combined weight and passion, was impossible to silence. We rode the waves of desire, giving ourselves over to the intensity of the moment, losing all track of time. When I woke up in the morning light, Marilyn was still beside me, her head resting contentedly on my arm. I gently shifted her head to the side, freeing my numb arm from under her. I needed to get to work. I quickly got dressed, brushed my teeth, and headed out to grab some breakfast sandwiches. One for me and one for Marilyn. Rise and shine, sleepyhead, I announced, walking back into the room. Marilyn's eyes fluttered open. Whoa, it's morning already? Yep, get up and have breakfast with me. We have a lot to do today. Oh shit, I'm late. She jumped out of bed and frantically threw on her clothes. Before dashing out the door, she gave me a playful slap on the ass and a mischievous grin. See y'all later, Jack. I chuckled to myself, looking down at the 2 uneaten breakfast sandwiches. I had completely forgotten about David. I grabbed his sandwich and trudged over to his apartment, knocking on the door. Hey, wake up, sleepyhead, I hollered. Who is it? What's with the early wake-up call? David, it's Jack. You up? What? You're kidding, right? What do you mean? Just hold on a sec. A moment later, a pale and exhausted David stumbled to the door, yawning widely. His fatigue was contagious, and I couldn't help but yawn myself. Here, eat this, I said, shoving the sandwich into his hands. You look like you need it after all that drinking last night. You guys were like animals. Tell me about it. David groaned, accepting the food gratefully. You're a lifesaver. Thanks, man. He collapsed onto the couch and pointed to a chair. Have a seat, he said, disappearing into the bathroom. Don't tell me, did you eat all that last night? Yeah, so? Man, one of these days, you're going to give yourself a heart attack. You should be more careful. He emerged from the bathroom, spitting into the sink. What about you? You were acting like a madman last night, I said, grinning. What did I do? You don't remember? Remember what? What do I need to remember? Never mind, let's just pretend it never happened, I said, relieved. David went back to unpacking. I was glad that what happened between Marilyn and me stayed between us. It seemed even David, in his drunken stupor, hadn't noticed a thing. I felt a sense of relief wash over me. I whistled cheerfully as I started organizing my belongings, excited for this new chapter in my life. I couldn't believe that on my very first day in Los Angeles, I had already gotten myself into such a bizarre and exciting situation. It had all happened so fast, so unexpectedly. As I was lost in thought about the previous night's events, I caught sight of Marilyn moving around the complex, apparently checking on something. Feeling mischievous, I called out to her. Well, if it isn't the landlady, what brings you out here so early? Marilyn shot me a glare but didn't say anything. She continued her rounds, stopping at each apartment to check the water meters and jotting down some notes. When she reached my door, she beckoned me with a wave of her hand. Come here for a second, she whispered urgently. What's up? I asked. Listen, last night, what happened between us, we can't tell anyone. Got it? Yeah, of course not. Who would I tell? It's not a big deal. Good, my husband is back in town. He's the jealous type, and he has quite the temper. If he ever found out about us, well, let's just say it wouldn't be pretty. Wait, you're married? I was completely taken aback. Well, yeah, what did you expect? It's not like I can stay single forever. Right. I stammered, trying to process this new information. Look, let's not make this a habit, okay? Remember what I said. See you around. She noticed her husband approaching and quickly changed the subject. "Oh, and one more thing. You just moved in, so you won't have to pay for water until next month. I'll add it to next month's rent. Don't be late with my money." Yeah, I know. Don't worry about it," I muttered, nodding dumbly. "See you, Marilyn." I watched as she walked away, feeling a mixture of confusion and disappointment. She was married. Here I was, thinking I was some kind of playboy. And I was actually the one being played. I mentally kicked myself for being so foolish. For letting myself get caught up in this secret affair. But what was done was done. I enjoyed every minute of it. I couldn't just cut her off cold turkey. But I knew I had to distance myself. Later that day, I learned more about Marilyn from the other tenants. They told me she'd been married for a few years to a man much older than her. He was already divorced and had children from his previous marriage. Apparently, they'd gotten together without a formal ceremony. They just had a simple dinner with their families, lit some incense for their ancestors. And that was that. They were husband and wife. She had been looking for a man to lean on, someone to provide stability, and he was desperate for a son, something his ex-wife couldn't give him. They'd been trying for a baby for years, but Marilyn couldn't get pregnant. They'd been to countless doctors, spent a fortune on fertility treatments, but nothing worked. John was constantly away for work. No one knew exactly what he did, but he was rarely home. He used to visit Marilyn often, especially when they first got married, eager to try for a baby. But as time went on, and the negative pregnancy tests piled up, he started to withdraw. He became less affectionate, less attentive. Marilyn, on the other hand, was a woman who enjoyed intimacy. She craved it, especially now that her husband was always gone. She had tried to seduce other tenants in the past, but they all turned her down. It wasn't that they weren't attracted to her. They were just afraid of her husband and his reputation. It only made her want it more. Even David had been the target of her advances, but he knew better than to get involved. Yesterday, when I had just arrived in the city, a complete newbie, she had seized the opportunity to seduce me, turning me into her plaything. I couldn't accept that, yet I couldn't forget the sensations she had awakened within me. It was a constant battle raging inside me. I wasn't sure if what we were doing was right or wrong. But every time I tried to resist, her image would flash before my eyes, her lips, her skin, her body, as sweet and tempting as sugarcane. And so it went on. We continued to sleep together countless times. Our secret affair, a thrilling mix of lust and danger. I knew it was wrong, adultery. Plain and simple, but I found myself addicted to the thrill of it all. The excitement of sneaking around. The knowledge that anyone could walk in on us at any moment. I was lost in this maze of emotions, with no escape in sight. I had been wrong from the very beginning, letting my desire for her cloud my judgment. It was too late for regrets. That evening, as I returned from taking out the trash and was about to unlock my door, a familiar hand brushed against mine. I closed my eyes, enjoying the sensation, my mind going blank as I waited for her next move. Her touch was electric, sending shivers down my spine. That intoxicating scent, both familiar and comforting, filled the air around me. "Why don't you come inside, honey?" she whispered. "Hold on, Marilyn, I think I dropped the key." I bent down, picked up the key, and fumbled with the lock. Even the key seemed to yearn for the warmth of the keyhole. I thought, but the wait, the anticipation, only heightened the excitement to come. I stepped inside, my body already anticipating what was to come. I collapsed onto the bed, surrendering to her touch. Her hands worked their magic. Her kisses sent shivers down my spine. And her body was intoxicating. Every touch, every kiss, ignited a fire within me. We reversed roles, taking turns exploring each other's desires. Under Marilyn's expert guidance, I had become quite the student, learning how to bring her to the brink of ecstasy with a mere touch. A whisper, a kiss. Our bodies moved in sync. A passionate dance on the edge of control. The bed creaked and groaned under our combined weight, threatening to collapse at any moment. We clung to each other like two snakes entwined, our desire consuming us, our needs met quickly and efficiently. We were both breathless and spent, our bodies still intertwined, when a heavy hand slammed against the door, startling us apart. "You filthy whores!" A man's voice roared from the other side. How dare you do this to me? Get out here, you hear me? I'll teach you to betray me. It was John, Marilyn's husband, consumed by a jealous rage. We scrambled to get dressed as he pounded on the door, his voice laced with fury. You think you can hide from me? I know you're in there. And you? He bellowed, directing his rage at me. Get out here, you coward, let's see what you're made of. The other tenants, awakened by the commotion, began gathering outside our door, whispering among themselves. I could hear David's voice above the rest. John was wielding a metal pipe, his face contorted with anger as he continued to shout threats and obscenities. Ranting about his misfortunes, his voice a mixture of fury and self-pity. Marilyn and I were pale with fear, too terrified to move. He sounded like a rabid animal, ready to tear us apart. I quickly pushed a dresser in front of the door, hoping to buy us some time if he managed to break in. Suddenly, the shouting stopped. He wasn't trying to break down the door anymore. We heard his footsteps retreating down the hallway. People began murmuring amongst themselves, asking questions, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Then I heard David's panicked voice. Oh my God, he's got a gas can. Jack, run. Marilyn and I froze. We were trapped. There was nowhere to go. We watched in horror as he poured gasoline around the perimeter of the apartment building. Some of the other tenants tried to stop him, but he swung his pipe at them, chasing them away. Realizing their efforts were futile, they backed away, afraid of getting caught in the crossfire. John struck a match. The flames erupted with a whoosh, spreading rapidly, fueled by the gasoline. We could feel the heat of the fire licking at our faces. I raced into the bathroom, grabbed a towel to cover our mouths and noses, and dragged Marilyn towards the window. The hallway was already filled with thick smoke. Help! Fire! People screamed from outside, but it was no use. The fire was too intense, spreading too quickly. The few fire extinguishers in the building were useless against such a blaze. The air grew thick and heavy, making it difficult to breathe. My vision blurred, and I could feel myself growing weak. I reached for Marilyn's hand, desperate to comfort her, but I could barely breathe myself. We collapsed to the floor, our lungs screaming for air, our vision fading to black. I felt a strange sense of peace wash over me. Maybe this was it. Maybe this was the end. Faintly, as if from a distance, I heard the sound of sirens approaching. Marilyn and I were both rescued from the burning building, but not before the fire had consumed several apartments. Thankfully, no one was seriously injured. John was arrested for arson and attempted murder. He hadn't killed anyone, but his intentions were clear. He had meant to hurt us, maybe even kill us. In the aftermath of the fire, Marilyn left John for good. She couldn't bear to be with him after what he had done. As for me, I was discharged from the hospital a few days later. Feeling lost and disillusioned, I'd come to Los Angeles hoping for a fresh start. But my life felt like a bigger mess than ever, even though I was making more money than I did back in the Midwest. The cost of living was so much higher here. I was barely scraping by. I missed my family, my friends, my old life. I decided to go back home and start over. Marilyn, now accustomed to life in Los Angeles, couldn't imagine leaving, and I couldn't blame her. We said our goodbyes, putting an end to our passionate but ultimately destructive affair. I returned to the Midwest, got a job, and tried to rebuild my life. 2 years later, I met Olivia, and we got married. We had 2 beautiful children together, a boy and a girl. They were my world. A few years later, I had to go back to Los Angeles for a business trip. I couldn't help but think of Marilyn. On a whim, I decided to visit the old neighborhood, hoping to catch a glimpse of her, even though a part of me knew it was a bad idea. Fate, it seemed, had other plans. The apartment complex was still there, but it was under new management. Marilyn, apparently, she had bought the place from John after their divorce. It looked like she had invested a lot of money in renovations. The building was modern, clean, and all the units were occupied. But one detail remained unchanged. She had kept the same unit where I used to live, untouched, as if frozen in time. Time, however, had not been kind to Marilyn. She had aged. There were lines on her face now, and her body was no longer the firm, youthful figure I remembered. Her skin, once milky white, was now weathered and tanned, marked with the passage of time. I had changed too. I was no longer the reckless young man who had fallen into her arms so easily. But some things never change. The desire, the forbidden longing we felt for each other, was still there, simmering beneath the surface. And so, we fell into bed, our bodies moving together with a familiar urgency. But something was different this time. The passion was still there, but it was tempered with a newfound tenderness. A quiet understanding that only time and experience could bring. I knew what I was doing was wrong. I was betraying Olivia, betraying the vows I had made to her. And yet, I couldn't stop myself. It was as if my body had a mind of its own. Drawn to Marilyn like a moth to a flame, I was lost in the darkness, a willing prisoner of my own desires. Thanks for watching. Jack's story reminds us of the powerful consequences that come with choices driven by passion and temptation. In the end, even though the past is behind him, the pull of old desires is hard to escape. As we reflect on his journey, we're left to wonder, can anyone truly outrun their mistakes? Or do they follow us forever? If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an update. See you in the next video.